Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking something that's absolutely crucial for global business operations. Yet, let's be honest, often feels incredibly overwhelming. Modern export controls. Look, if you're operating internationally, you already know that navigating the labyrinth of global trade regulations can feel a bit like trying to defuse a bomb while blindfolded. It's high stakes, it's highly complex, and getting it wrong? Well, that's just not an option. Which brings us right to the elephant in the room, and the core question we're answering today. How do you actually lead export compliance without a full-time leader? It's a very real, very pressing struggle that companies of all sizes face. You know you need the expertise, but adding a specialized executive-level headcount just isn't always feasible. So what's the workaround? Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll outline the export control dilemma. Second, we'll introduce the fractional leader. Third, the scope of expert services. Fourth, choosing a retainer package. Fifth, the business benefits. And finally, shifting from reactive to proactive compliance.
Let's start with Section 1, the export control dilemma.
Let's set the stage here, because export controls are no longer just about checking shipping boxes. They're about intense geopolitical risk management. And the growing obligations are just staggering. We've got the EU dual-use regulation, military export controls, US ERI and ITAR, sanctions and embargoes that seem to change practically overnight. Catch-all controls, strict end-user requirements. I mean, it's a literal alphabet soup of regulations. The sheer volume of compliance checks you have to run is enough to give any operations manager a migraine. And that leads to this agonizing dilemma. You absolutely need expert export control leadership to navigate all that, but you simply cannot justify the cost of a full-time executive-level hire. When this gap exists, compliance responsibilities get totally fragmented. HR has a piece, logistics grabs a piece, legal steps in, and the result? Critical decisions get delayed. Lucrative business opportunities stall out. Management is left without strategic guidance, and your regulatory risks absolutely skyrocket.
Moving to Section 2. Enter the fractional leader.
Thankfully, there's a brilliant way out of this trap, and it comes through a highly specialized service model from WZ52, a fractional head of export controls. It's exactly what it sounds like, a dedicated export control leader, but acting on a part-time basis. You're getting that top-tier executive advisory, the operational support, the regulatory intelligence, and the program oversight you desperately need, but without the massive overhead of recruiting a full-time employee. It's all delivered through a predictable monthly retainer, perfectly bridging that gap between sky-high risk and tight budgets.
Let's move to Section 3 and see how this builds out, the scope of expert services. Okay, so it's great to have a title, but what does a fractional leader actually do on a day-to-day basis? Well, first up is governance and oversight. This is absolutely crucial. They step in as your primary export control point of contact. They're the ones advising your executive teams, supporting those high-stakes board-level discussions, reviewing processes, and overseeing your internal compliance programs, or ICP. By taking on these high-level governance tasks, they pull the heavy compliance burden directly off the C-suite's shoulders.
But, they aren't just sitting in the boardroom. They handle the operational grit, too. Across operations, training, and strategy, they're managing complex product classifications, handling license determinations, and stepping in for escalation management the second a red flag pops up. They also conduct targeted employee training, prep you for those nerve-wracking audits, and even provide due diligence during mergers and acquisitions. This right here is where the real day-to-day risk mitigation actually happens.
All right, Section 4. Choosing your retainer package.
WZ52 offers 3 distinct tiers to match your specific operational needs. Now, to ensure stability, these operate on a 12-month minimum commitment, with quarterly advance invoicing. The first tier is the Essential Package, which gives you 1 day of support per month. This is designed for organizations with limited export control activity that just need that periodic oversight. You get a monthly management consultation, a review of key escalations, and regulatory updates. It's honestly the perfect starting point for SMEs, or companies just starting to build out their compliance frameworks.
Stepping up, we have the Professional Package at 2 days per month. This includes everything in the Essentials tier, but adds vital operational support for ongoing cases. So you're getting hands-on classification and licensing reviews, end-use assessment support, participation in management meetings, and a monthly KPI review. This is the ideal sweet spot for growing exporters, tech companies, and aerospace suppliers facing climbing regulatory complexity.
And finally, we have the Strategic Package, providing 4 days per month. This is the heavy hitter. It includes everything from the previous tiers, plus Export Control Steering Committee participation, complete ICP development, strict audit readiness reviews, and strategic risk management. If you're a high-growth multinational, a dual-use manufacturer, or a major defense contractor, this is where you need to be. And this brilliantly illustrates how the services scale up from 1 to 2 to 4 days a month, based exactly on your company's profile. One key feature I want to highlight is that both the professional and strategic packages include an annual export control health check. That is an incredible tool for benchmarking your program year over year. Any unused days do expire at month end, but additional support is always available at a preferential day rate if you need it.
Moving right along to Section 5, the business benefits.
Let's shift our perspective to the actual ROI, because the payoff here is totally transformative. You get incredible cost efficiency by accessing senior expertise without the massive salary of a full-time executive. Decision-making happens way faster because you don't have non-experts trying to interpret complex laws. Ultimately, you dramatically lower your exposure to costly regulatory actions and gain genuine business agility. Instead of compliance being a roadblock, it becomes an enabler for growth. Plus, you finally get clear executive visibility. Finally, Section 6. From reactive to proactive.
So, the crucial point is a major mindset shift that goes far beyond just checking boxes. Reactive compliance is merely surviving today's laws, understanding what regulations require right now. But WZ52 pushes you toward proactive export control intelligence. That means strategically anticipating tomorrow's global risks before they ever hit your supply chain. It's about looking over the horizon, not just staring at the paperwork on your desk.
To wrap up, I want to leave you with this really provocative question to chew on. Are your export controls just a legal requirement, or have you evolved them into a strategic business capability? Because if you're still treating compliance merely as a cost center or a necessary evil, you are leaving your business completely exposed. It might just be time to rethink your strategy and consider bringing a fractional expert into the fold. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.